ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب، ومن شر النفاثات في العقد، ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. الله أكبر ولله الحمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. الله أكبر ولله الحمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون. أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. وإلهكم إله واحد لا إله إلا هو الرحمن الرحيم. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء. وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يعوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وإن تبدوا ما في أنفسكم أو تخفوه يحاسبكم به الله فيغفر لمن يشاء ويعذب من يشاء والله على كل شيء قدير. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين آمين. إن رحمة الله قريب من المحسنين وما أرسلناك إلا رحمة للعالمين. لقد جاءكم رسول من أنفسكم عزيز عليه ما عنتم حريص عليكم بالمؤمنين رؤوف رحيم. فإن تولوا فقل حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. ما كان محمد أبا أحد من رجالكم ولكن رسول الله وخاتم النبيين وكان الله بكل شيء عليما. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ونبيك وحبيبك ورسولك النبي الأمي وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ونبيك وحبيبك ورسولك النبي الأمي وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ونبيك وحبيبك ورسولك النبي الأمي وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عدد ما علم الله، زنة ما علم الله، ملء ما علم الله. تبرأت من حولي وقوتي والجأت إلى حول الله وقوته في جميع أموري. اللهم اغفر لي ولوالدي ولمن توالد وارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. اللهم اغفر لي ولوالدي ومرشدنا ولمن توالد وارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون. أفضل الذكر لا إله إلا الله، 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 لا إله لا إله إلا الله، 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 لا إله إلا الله. محمد رسول الله صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم. إلا الله، 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 إلا إلا الله إلا الله إلا الله إلا الله الله إلا الله إلا الله الله إلا 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 الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم الله 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 محمد رسول الله صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم صلاة وسلاما عليك يا سيدي يا حبيبي يا رسول الله.
اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما تحب وترضى بأن تصلي وسلم عليه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. محمد مصطفى मेरी खबर लो रसूल किबरिया मेरी खबर लो अली तेरे खुदा मेरी खबर लो जरा मुश्किल कुशा मेरी खबर लो कुल के पीर ख्वाजा हसन बसरी इमाम दोसरा मेरी खबर लो ज़राए अब्द वाहिद इब्न ज़ैदा शेरे खुदा मेरी खबर लो हुज़ैल इब्न अयाज़ बारियाज़ा यही है इल्तिजा मेरी अमानुल अर्द इब्राहीम अदहम बलख के बादशाह मेरी खबर लो सदीदुद्दीन हुज़ैफा अशिया बराए हल अता मेरी खबर लो امین الدین عبیرہ شاہ بصرہ بحق مرتضیٰ میری خبر لو علو دین ور عالی مراتب اے شاہ دنا میری خبر لو ابو اسحاق چشتی خواجہ دین امام اولیاء میری خبر لو ابو احمد شہنشاہ فرسنا گلے باغ رضا میری جناب شیخ دی خواجہ محمد جہاں کے پیشوا میری خبر لو ابو یوسف عزیز مصر مانا تمہارا ہوں گدا میری خبر لو جناب قطب دین مودود چشتی اسیر غم ہوا میری خبر لو مدد حاجی شریف زندگی ہو بندی بلا میری خبر لو دہائی خواجہ عثمان ولی کی حبیب اللہ کا میری خبر لو معین الحق معین الدین چشتی سراپا ہے بنا میری خبر لو جناب خواجہ قطب الدین کاکی قطب اولیاء میری خبر لو فرید الدین مسعود شکر گنج زہد الانبیاء میری نظام الدین سلطان المشائخ محبوب خدا میری نصیر الدین چراغ دہلوی نصیر الاولیاء میری خبر لو کمال الدین علامہ عالم علیم رہنما میری خبر لو سراج الحق سراج الدین چشتی سراج الاولیاء میری خبر لو جناب خواجہ علم الحق والدین دریا علم کا میری خبر لو جناب شیخ محمود الفراجن گدا ہوں آپ کا میری خبر لو جمال الحق والدین شیخ جمن پیال عبا میری خبر لو حسن ہیبا محمد نام نامی دلیل الاتقیاء میری خبر لو محمد چشتی شیخ زمانہ ادھر دیکھو ذرا میری خبر لو مدد قطب مدینہ شیخ یحییٰ برائے مصطفیٰ میری کلیم اللہ جہاں آباد چشتی کلیم کبریا میری خبر لو نظام الحق والدین زیب اورنگ دکن کے شہنشاہ میری خبر لو جناب خواجہ فخر الدین چشتی شہ ملک ولا میری خبر لو ترحم خواجہ نور محمد بے دست پا میری خبر لو مدد پیر کلا خواجہ سلیمان چاہے تو ذرا میری خبر لو تمہیں حافظ محمد باعلی ہو امام و پیشوا میری خبر لو بحق شاہ خیر آباد توسا حبیب اولیاء میری خبر لو حبیب پاک صوفی شان نظامی برائے خواجگاہ میری جناب شاہ ابراہیم صوفی خدا کا واسطہ میری خبر لو غلام محی الدین قاضی حبیبی تم ہی ہو آسرا میری خبر لو اللهم صل وسلم عليك يا سيدي يا حبيبي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا رحمة للعالمين.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Tonight marks the 6th Urs Mubarak and Wisal of our Honorable Sheikh Hazrat Qazi Ghulam Muhyiddin as-Siddiqi, and Quran Shareefs that have been dedicated throughout the year, where we have 9 to 10 Quran khatams every week that's taking place in Mauritius, in Cape Town, Johannesburg, and Durban, and then the UK has their own one as well running. And this is the permanent Isale Sawab to all the marhumeen. And tonight is basically a culmination where we would present this hadiyah. Allah Ta'ala accept all this in the court of our Sheikh, and let this be a source of blessing for us, and we ask for his gaze perpetually, inshallah. We also dedicate this night to the Murideen who we lost during the course of the year due to the COVID pandemic, and some of them through natural means. And this was namely Hazra Bibi Ashraf, the mother of Zain, our mother of Sajid, our Auntie Yasmin, our Ibrahim Bhai from Cape Town who is here, his mother Shamshira, who passed away from COVID, as well as Janab Haji Muhammad Yusuf and Janab Bhai Aircon, Sayyid Abdullah, and I'm not sure if I've missed anybody else out, and all those who are recovering. And all those that are recovering, Allah Ta'ala grant them a complete recovery. I believe it's quite a lengthy process, but may Allah Ta'ala make it easy for you. And Allah Ta'ala protect all of us. And tonight is also dedicated to Sultan Hind Mu'izzuddin Chishti Hassan Sanjari, Hazrat Gharib Nawaz, and Qutb Africa, Hazrat Sufi Sahab Qibla Rahimahullah. So it is a night of Urs, a night wherein we can benefit tremendously spiritually in many, many ways. And as indicated, due to COVID, we're not feeding at the Khanqa. We've done various feeding initiatives that have taken place and will be taking place tomorrow. Some of them already been done. We've done a water distribution. And then at the Khanqa, there's niyaz that will be distributed. So please ensure that you take your niyaz. And at the same time, advice that is being given to all the murideen to make your own niyaz at home. Make your own niyaz at home, and perhaps this is the new norm, and this is what Allah Ta'ala wills, and this is what is most beneficial. Is Hazrat himself used to always tell me this in a joking way, that whenever we used to bring him gifts or anything, and I'll bring something for my mother or do something, and he'll say, "What did you give me? What did you bring for me?" And the same principle would apply when he speaks about Isale Sawab. He says, we can ask everybody else to read Quran, I can feed, and people will contribute and we feed. But as an individual, what have I done for him? Or as a murid, what have you done for the Sheikh? And I think this is something which every individual needs to take ownership and accountability for, and how you preserve his legacy. It's your way, in your own special way. Each one had their own unique bond with him. And this is what I would recommend for tonight and tomorrow. Do whatever you want that's going to earn sawab for your Sheikh, and that you want to pass on a reward, a gift to him. And inshallah, Hafiz would be enlightening us. Hazrat Maulana Fuzail will be taking over shortly. But before that, I don't want to take much of his time. We have a kalam that will be recited by Hafiz Rashid, inshallah, and he will deliver the discourse. And then at the end of it, inshallah, we have a final dua that will be dedicated to all the marhumeen and our Sheikh Hazrat Qazi Ghulam Muhyiddin Siddiq.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Evening is like صلی علی محمد دل میں ایک تڑپ اٹھی آنسو سے وضو کیا آپ جو یاد آ گئے پڑھیے آپ جو یاد آ گئے میری نماز ہو گئی صلی علی نبینا صلی علی محمد وہ جو نہ تھے تو کچھ نہ تھا وہ جو نہ ہو تو کچھ نہ ہو جان ہے وہ جہان کی جان ہے تو جہان ہے صلی علی نبینا صلی علی محمد پڑھیے صلی علی حبیب جام حب آپلا جام حب آپلا ساقیا پیر کا جام حب آپلا ساقیا پیر کا پی کے ہو جاؤں میں پی کے ہو جاؤں میں بخدا پیر کا جام حب پلا ساقیا پیر کا جام حب پلا ساقیا پیر کا پی کے ہو جاؤں میں پی کے ہو جاؤں میں کا پی کے ہو جاؤں میں بخدا پیر کا.
Let me translate it for you. O wine pourer of divine love, O wine pourer of divine love, pour for me a goblet of the love of my spiritual master. And when I drink from that goblet of love for my spiritual master, may I become so intoxicated with the love that I become eternally and belong to my spiritual master forever and ever, inshallah.
آئینہ دیکھ لوں تو یہ آئے گما. شیخ خاص طور سے چاہوں گا. آئینہ دیکھ لوں تو یہ آئے گما. واقعی عکس میرا ہے یا پیر کا. واقعی عکس میرا ہے یا پیر کا. جام حب آ پلا, جام حب آ پلا, ساقیا پیر کا. پی کے ہو جاؤں میں بخدا پیر کا.
This is the height of spiritual annihilation. Right? آئینہ دیکھ لوں تو یہ ہو
آئینہ دیکھ لوں تو یہ
آئے گما. When I look into the mirror, may I just for a few moments just get a bit, like shaking. آئے گما, what's going on, like a glimpse. آئینہ دیکھ لوں تو یہ آئے گما. Be dazzled away. Right? واقعی عکس میں, is it truly my image or is it the picture of my sheikh in the mirror?
خود خدا نے خریدا مجھے جس گھڑی. خود خدا نے خریدا مجھے جس گھڑی. ہاتھ میں ہاتھ ہم, ہاتھ میں ہاتھ ہم نے لیا پیر کا. ہاتھ میں ہاتھ ہم نے لیا پیر کا.
Allah himself purchased me. Inna Allah ashtara min al-mu'minin. Inna alladhina yubayyidu Allahi fawqa. Even Allah himself purchased me at that very moment when I gave my hand into the hand of my spiritual master. Allah purchased me.
رب میرا کون ہے دین کیا اور نبی. رب میرا کون ہے دین کیا اور نبی. میں نے ایک یہی, میں نے ایک یہی حوالہ دیا پیر کا. میں نے ایک یہ حوالہ دیا پیر کا. میں نے ایک یہ حوالہ دیا پیر کا.
When I die and I'm facing to my grave and the malaika ask me, Man Rabbu, who's your Lord? Who's your deen? What is your deen? And who's your Nabi? These are three questions we ask them. In all of these instances, when these questions will ask me, I give them one reference only. One reference only, and that's the reference of my peer. Go and ask my peer. Ask him who's my Rabb, who's my deen, and who's my Nabi. I give you one hawala, my reference is my peer.
اس میں اعظم کی تاثیر ہے آزما. اس میں اعظم کی تاثیر ہے آزما. کر زباں سے ذرا, کر زباں سے ذرا ورد یا پیر کا. کر زباں سے ذرا, کر زباں سے ذرا ورد یا پیر کا. جام حب آ پلا, جام حب آپلا ساقیا پیر کا.
It has the effect of Ismul Azam for the Ismul Azam, the greatest, which is that he says, go and test it. I say, go and test it. Azma, test it. Right? Make the wird of your Zuma, Ya Pir, Ya Pir, Ya Pir, Ya Pir. It has the spiritual effect of Ismul Azam for the murid, inshallah.
ذات حق جس کو مرشد میں نہ دیکھ سکا، ذات حق جس کو مرشد میں نہ دیکھ سکا، دید اس نے کبھی نہ کیا پیر کا، دید اس نے کبھی نہ کیا پیر کا.
This is Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi's share, which are translated into Urdu. Har ke zaate pir, har ke zaate har ke zaate pir o haq ra yak nadid. ہر کے ذات پیر و حق را یک ندید، نئے مریدوں نئے مریدوں نئے مرید. He who did not see the anwar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the face of the peer, in reality he's never seen his peer. And the Prophet of Allah said, خِيَارُكُمُ الَّذِينَ إِذَا رُؤُوا ذُكِرَ اللَّهِ. The best of you are those who when you see them, remind you of Allah. If you didn't see that in your peer, you've never seen your peer.
ہاں دل میں جو ہے دیا، دل میں جو ہے دیا جل رہا عشق کا، دل میں جو ہے دیا جل رہا عشق کا. سنے صدقہ حافظ کا، صدقہ حافظ کا، صوفی پیا پیر کا، صدقہ حافظ کا، صدقہ حافظ پیا صوفی پیا پیر کا، صدقہ حافظ کا صوفی پیا پیر کا.
This lamp of love that has been lit in my heart has been lit by virtue of whom? Sadqa Hafiz ka, of my Hafiz Pir. Sadqa Sufi Pir, and a Sufi Pir, and Sadqa of my Pir, Sadqa Pir.
راہ حق جو دید اور عشق کی اس کو معراج ہو، جس نے مشرق تصور کیا پیر کا، جس نے مشرق تصور کیا پیر کا، جس نے مشق تصور کیا پیر کا.
He has received the spiritual ascension of vision and love. He has achieved the spiritual ascent, Mi'raj of love and vision. Whoever engaged in the exercise of making the tasawwur of his peer, if he keeps on getting lost in the thought of his peer, he ascends to the spiritual heights of love and vision of the peer.
مختصر کون ہے تو فضیل اور क्या कर सके, कौन है तू फुज़ैल और क्या कर सके, तेरा बस नाम है, तेरा बस नाम है, सब किया पीर का, तेरा बस नाम है, सब किया पीर का, तेरा बस नाम है, सब किया पीर का, जाम हुब आ पिला साकिया पीर का, पी के हो जाऊं मैं बखुदा पीर का, जाम हुब आ पिला साकिया पीर का।
This last line applies to all of us. Who are you as a murid, and in reality, who are you? कौन है तू फुज़ैल? क्या कर सके? What capacity do you have? What are your credentials? Nothing. कौन है तू फुज़ैल? क्या कर सके? What can you do? What are your credentials? What's your capacity? बस तेरा नाम है. It's just your name in the front. सब किया पीर का. But who actually does it? The peer does it for you. You just a front man. You just a front man. In reality, the one who's pulling the strings and doing everything is the spiritual master, inshallah ta'ala. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم، رسوله النبي الأمين المكين الحنين الكريم الرؤوف الرحيم. أما بعد، فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال الله تعالى في شأن حبيبه: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما تحب وترضى بأن تصلي عليه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هذه سبيلي أدعو إلى الله على بصيرة أنا ومن اتبعني وسبحان الله وما أنا من المشركين. صدق الله العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك لمن الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Most respected Mashayikh, ulama kiram, my respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, with the grace of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and with the benedictions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, we have gathered here this evening in observing the Urs of Sultan al-Hind Khaja Khaja Mu'inuddin Chishti Hassan Sanjari Ajmeri rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, and Sayyidina wa Murshidina Hazrat Shah Ghulam Muhammad Sufi Siddiqi Urf Hazrat Sufi Sahib rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, and his illustrious grandson Hazrat Shah Ghulam Muhyiddin Qazi Habibi Qaddasallahu ta'ala Sirrahul Aziz. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His infinite mercy accept our presence here this evening, and may we accept whatever we do sincerely for His sake, inshallah ta'ala. We always speak about the status of the spiritual master and the maqam of the spiritual master and his greatness, etc., etc. Have you ever asked yourself, what is the status of the true, genuine murid? पीर की बातें तो सब करते हैं ना, but have you ever asked yourself, what is the status of the murid? And in a hadith of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, narrated by Abu Darda radiyallahu ta'ala anhu in the Sunan of Abu Dawud, in Sahih Hadith, he shed light on this, and he stated, "Man salaka tariqan yabtaghi fihi ilman." The word is tariqa. Man salaka tariqan yabtaghi fihi ilman, salaka Allahu bihi tariqan ila al-jannah. The Prophet ﷺ, he's speaking about now, remember, the highest knowledge that one can seek is the knowledge of Allah. Everything is under that, and the highest knowledge you can achieve is the knowledge of Allah. So imagine that person who seeks out the highest knowledge, which is the knowledge of Allah. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said, "Man salaka tariqan yabtaghi fihi ilman, salaka Allahu bihi tariqan ila jannah." Whosoever embarks on a path seeking knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens up the path for him for Jannah. This is the status of a disciple, of the murid. And then the Holy Prophet ﷺ stated, he said, وَإِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ لَتَضَعُ أَجْنِحَتَهَا رِضًا لِطَالِبِ الْعِلْمِ. And when this seeker of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's seeking a path to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, embarks on this journey, he is shaded by the wings of malaika out of approval for what he is doing. Ridan. Out of approval for what he does, out of honor for him, the malaika shade him with their wings. So congratulations to all those true, genuine, sincere, committed, devoted disciples and seekers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That right now, this journey of yours that you have embarked on maybe for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, every step that you've taken on this path in seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a disciple and a murid has been under the shade of malaika. And you have been shaded under the wings of malaika. That is the status of a murid. But allow me tonight to tell you what is the status of a spiritual master and a murshid. As a disciple, the malaika, out of approval and out of honor for you, lay out their wings and shade you in their wings in your journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the spiritual master is that one about whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instructed the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the Holy Quran. Ya Rasulullah, inform them. Qul hadihi sabili. Tell them, O Prophet of Allah, that this is my path. And what is the path of the Prophet of Allah? What is the tariqah of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Ad'u ila Allah. I invite people to Allah. The first stage is ud'u ila sabili rabbik. The first stage for the novices is to invite them to the path of Allah. They've been on a different path. You're taking them away from the wrong path and you brought them to the right path. That's level one. Ud'u ila sabili rabbik. But the second level and the higher level of which the Prophet ﷺ said, he said, Hadihi sabili. The path of the Prophet of Allah in the higher level is ad'u ila Allah. That when you are already on the straight path to Allah, the job of the Prophet of Allah is to take you to Allah. But the Prophet of Allah didn't stop there. He didn't say, I am the only one who takes you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you're on the path. I'm not the only one. Ana. He said, I first, because he's Murshidul Azam. As-salame taj bakhsh awliya, rahmat alam, Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is the ultimate Piro Murshid. The Piro Murshid is eventually going to give your hand into his hands. And yadullahi fawqa aydihim. But the Prophet of Allah, I said, I invite them to the path of Allah. Ana, myself, wa manittaba'ani. And those who follow me. So there's a group of people out there who follow directly in the footsteps of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet of Allah said, it is me and them. And Huzur Ghawsul Azam is obviously one of them. He said, وَكُلُّ وَلِيٍّ لَهُ قَدَمٌ وَإِنِّي عَلَىٰ قَدَمِ النَّبِيِّ بَدْرِ الْكَمَالِ. He just affirmed, I'm following in the footsteps of the Prophet of Allah. And he is Ghawsul Azam. So the Prophet of Allah said, أَنَا وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَنِي. Why am I telling you this? Like I said, for a disciple, for a murid, his maqam is that the malaika shade him with their wings as long as he's embarking on the journey. But the Quran says about a spiritual master and a murshid who falls into the category of ana wa man ittaba'ani, who follows the Prophet of Allah. Allah instructs the Prophet of Allah, leave the malaika. Allah tells the Prophet of Allah, wakhfid janahak. Ya Rasulullah, extend your saya. That base ayah, that shadowless prophet, Ya Rasulullah, you extend your wing of mercy and love and compassion. وَخْفِدْ جَنَاحَكَ لِمَنِ اتَّبَعَكَ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. You see, أَنَا وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَنِي. What did Allah say? Those who follow Ya Rasulullah, what do you do for them? When they are embarking on the journey, taking other people to Allah by following in the footsteps of the Prophet of Allah, leave the malaika covering with their wings. That Pir or Murshid and the spiritual master is covered by the wings and the saya of Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is not a hyperbolic statement. Allah says, وَخْفِدْ جَنَاحَكَ لِمَنِ اتَّبَعَكَ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. So I ask you, what must be the darja of the person and the status of the person who is under the saya of the shadowless Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam? But the question that arises today, we get 101, in our fake news, we get 101 fake peers as well. Unfortunately, Dukandar peers. Plenty in the marketplace. We get 100 of them. So anybody will tell you nowadays, no, I'm following the path of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm following his sunnah. I'm living his sunnah. I'm following ittiba. Qul in kuntum tuhibbuna Allah fattabi'uni. I'm doing it by it. So how do we make out the distinction between the real and the fake? So the Prophet of Allah says, no, ana wa man ittaba'ani. I and those who follow me, zahiran wa batina, those who follow me inwardly and outwardly, it's very simple. Don't worry about what he looks like. Don't worry about his garb. Don't worry about how big his turban is. Don't worry how big a jubbah he's wearing. Don't worry about the color of his outfit. Don't worry about his fancy talks. Don't worry about his gestures and his actions and his gesticulation. Don't worry about all that. You want to know who are those people who follow me? Ana wa man ittabani. Simple description I'll give you. Who are they? How do we recognize them? He said, إِذَا رُؤُوا ذُكِرَ اللَّهِ. जब उनको देख लो खुदा याद आ जाए. When you see them, you are reminded of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Finished. That you can't fake. That you can't fake. You can put on as much fancy turbans and this and that, whatever it is there. But you know what? People will get, amazed and dazzled by it for a little while. After a while, you know what? The glitz and glamour wears off. The makeup comes off. But the real ones, the beauty comes from inside. إِذَا رُؤُوا ذُكِرَ اللَّهِ. The Rasulullah said, if you want to know who are those who follow me, when you see them, Khuda yaad aata hai. Wahi hai mera. He is the one who truly follows me. But let's give a bigger description of this. Listen to this and make the summary of your Shaykh. Shaykh al-Akbar, Muhyiddin ibn al-Arabi gave a tashriq. He gave an explanation and a commentary on إِذَا رُؤُوا ذُكِرَ اللَّهِ. This is not, he didn't say it like that, but I'm telling you a description that he gave. So if you want to know who is a man, when you see him, he reminds you of Allah. Ask the question, why does he remind me of Allah? So Shaykh al-Akbar says, firstly, his personality is absolute justice and balance. His life was all about fairness, justice, and balance. And his personality was justice. And then he says, and the signs of the Quran is poured upon his head, meaning he keeps the Quran on his head. Now imagine a man who's on a balance. Who's the most perfectly balanced person? If you put something on your head, a matka, bahut katin hai dagar pangat ki. When they're walking with that matka, how you got to walk? Absolute balance. You got to be absolutely balanced out. So he says, this Waliullah, if you want to remind him and he reminds you of Allah, how do you know that his personality is just this absolute balance? But how is he balancing himself? The Quran is on his head. So you think he's going to allow the Quran to fall? He's always going to be walking on the straight path. And he said, Shaykh al-Akbar said, his beauty is upon his face. إِذَا رُؤُوا, when you see him, you are reminded of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he said so many things. And he says, but you will see it, and wisdom is on his tongue. Wisdom is on his tongue. His conscience is in his eyes. His eyes are not deceptive. His conscience, you can see his innocence in his eyes. You can see the sincerity in his eyes. You can see the humility in his eyes. And then he said his virtue is upon his belly. He is not big, fat, obese. Right? Khana khane wala. No. Thoda khane wala. Qillatul ta'am. His virtue is upon his belly. And his chastity is between his private part. Doesn't engage in any type of haram activity. This is my favorite part. And his direction in which he's going is in his legs. This is important. And make the tasawwur of your Shaykh. For all the years, I'm doing from the time I was born. I know he knows me from that. All the years, his direction in his legs. That man who is a seeker to Allah, he only walks in one direction. Hubbaka wa hubba man yuhibbuk. And show me the love of those whom you love, of your love, and those whom you love. I saw my grandfather and my mentor walking to two places. He would either walk to Gracie Masjid, Hubbaka, to your love, Ya Allah, and he would walk farther away from there to Hazrat Bashapi. وَحُبَّ مَن يُحِبُّكَ. And he would walk from there, he would go to Hazrat Sufi Sahib. He would go from there, he would go to his uncle Hazrat Shah Ghulam Hafiz Sufi. وَأَسْأَلُكَ حُبَّكَ وَحُبَّ مَن يُحِبُّكَ. His direction is in his feet. So wherever he goes, what direction is he going in? From masjid to what we say mazar, khalas. That's where he walks. Right? तेरे कूचे में आना जाना जन्नत इसको कहते हैं. To walk in your gully, my Allah, that is what you call Jannah, to be in your gully, Allah. And then he says that, and his goal, his direction is in his legs, but his goal is in the soles of his feet. Huh? His goal is in the soles of his feet. What does this mean? What do you mean by this? Simple. Beda Marsi said, Yaha hona, na hona hai. To be something in this path is to be a nothing. Yaha hona, if you think you are a something, you are a nothing. Yaha hona, na hona hai, na hona, and to be truly a nothing, aina hona hai, is to truly become something. Jise hona ho kuch. If you want to become something, khake dare janana ho jaye. Become the dust beneath the feet of your beloved. Become the dust beneath the feet of your beloved, and then you will become something. So his goal is in the soles of his feet, means that I want to be the dust beneath the feet of my spiritual master. And every spiritual master said the same thing. I want to be the dust beneath the soles of my spiritual master. And this is goal is in the feet. I want to be at the feet of my murshid. Ask any and ask him if he had one wish. How I wish I'm just at the feet of my master. That is his goal. And then he said his humility shows in his clothes. His humility shows in his clothes. You don't need a fancy turban, fancy jubba, fancy shawl and whatever. Don't need that. What you wear, your humility is in the clothes. You see it there. It has a dignity, there has a waqar to it. It has an awe to it, it has a presence to it. It shows humility at the same time. It shows a degree of self-dignity. His humility is in his clothes. And his gentleness is his adornment. He doesn't need to put on fancy chains and necklaces here and fancy rings. His adornment is his gentleness. How you better? You okay, my better? Everything is okay. He'll give you a kiss on your cheek, right? And he'll hold you and say everything is okay. That is his adornment. His gentleness is his adornment, and his humanity is his jewel. In his ring, his humanity is his jewel. Because as much as he may be spiritual, he is easily human. He'll humor you. He'll crack a joke with you. He'll play with the animals. He will talk to children about little things out there. He'll show his humanity, because that's who I am. I am a human. His humanity is his jewel. And his love and fear of Allah are his crown, his taj. We don't wear tajes of big, big golds, right? We don't even want to be tajul tariqah, right? But his crown is his love of Allah and his fear of Allah. I remember when Hazrat passed, when Hazrat was sick and he went for his bypass, right? And he came out of his bypass. Amijan, she tells me, he said every time when Chicha came out of Kabul anesthetic, the first thing he was looking for was a topi. The first thing he looked for was his topi to cover his head, because this was the crown of Khilafat. That's his crown. The first thing came out of his, the drowsiness. He's asking, where's my topi? Just to put his topi on. His crown is his fear of Allah and his taqwa. And his sincerity is his path. I haven't met anybody. I don't know of any sheikh, and I can say this with confidence. I haven't met anybody who dedicate 20, 30 years of his life waking up murids for Salatul Tahajjud. And not only waking them up, making sure that they travel maybe 20, 25 kilometers every day, whether it was in Ispingo, whether you lived in Chatsworth, or whether you lived in Durban North, or whether you lived in town. Travel every day and can make Tahajjud Salah with me. Make Fajr Salah with me. Perform Dhikr with me. Engage in Ishraq with me. So I know that you are on the path with me. You can't get into an Uber or say you're hailing a taxi and then the Uber comes and the Uber goes away and you're standing there. So he would make sure the murid who became a murid didn't just take the ticket and not enter the show. Come for the early morning show, not late night show. Come for the early morning show. Come for it. Come, let's talk to Allah. Let's go into intimate munajat with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's make tawbah. Let's make istighfar. Let's start out the day remembering Allah. His sincerity is his path. And you know the kitab was written, Lanterns of the Path. Shaykh al-Akbar said his iman is the lamp in his hand to show the way. His iman is the lamp to show the path in his way. And his advice is in his character. He didn't have to tell you 100 things. His advice was his character itself. All that you need to do is to see how he responded without asking him. You will learn the lesson already. And he said, and his knowledge was in his foresight. He will tell you, don't do this. You're making a mistake. Meri baat sun le. Ask me, I'm his grandson. How many times you tell me, beta mat kar? Right? But unfortunately, you see, I would do it and then tell him I did it, I made a mistake, I'll sort it out. Whatever it is. Right? And his wealth is in his poverty. That was his wealth. Simple life. Never owned a car. Never owned a car. Can you? That's not wealth. Let me be in that gadi that is taking me to Allah. Any other gadi is nothing. That is appeal. And you know, I want you to realize this because this is very important. We don't realize and we don't appreciate the relationship. You see, there's a relationship between the teacher, and he was a teacher. He was literally a teacher. Right? But beyond that, he was a spiritual master. But there's a distinction between being a teacher and a spiritual master. The teacher, you respect for his knowledge and for what he can impart to you. I respect my, I failed maths, but I respect my maths teacher. Why? They imparted some knowledge to me. Right? But you don't respect the spiritual master because of what knowledge he imparts to you. You respect the spiritual master because of his zat and his personality, who he is. He doesn't impart knowledge to you. He is knowledge personified for you. He is knowledge personified for you. And this teacher gives off his knowledge. The teacher, you come into a classroom, teacher will teach you mathematics, teacher will teach you English, the teacher will teach you biology, the teacher will teach you physics, whatever. Teacher teaches you of his knowledge and gives his knowledge to you, whereas the Piro Murshid gives of himself to you. The Piro Murshid gives of himself to you. Whenever you come to him, he's giving a part of himself to you. The teacher is the one, right, who will teach the student the subject matter. I'm here. The English teacher is not going to teach you business economics. They tell you, bhai, there's a subject matter, I'm going to yes, sikha dunga. But in this line, the murshid is the subject matter himself. And the murid studies the teacher, and most importantly, the murshid studies the pupil. The teacher studies the pupil more than the pupil studies the teacher, because he eventually knows the student better than the student knows him. You see, okay, the teacher is the one, right? He's the teacher and student relationship ends when the course ends. The moment they taught you law, you finish your degree by ghar jao. But the spiritual master relationship is such, right? Maktabe ishq ke andaz nirale dekhe. We saw a different style and manner in the department of love. Usko chutti na mili jisne sabak yaad kiya. Who learned this lesson and who did well and got an A plus, he's the one who gets detention. The rest of them I told you go. But the one who got the A plus and passed it and got successful, he says, hey, you stay behind, we're going to give you detention. Usko chutti na mili jisne sabak yaad kiya. The teacher comes in the class, come, we got 45 minutes. We've got to finish the whole class inside there. The teacher is worried about the time and when the time period will come to an end. But the Piro Murshid is worried about this moment right now. He's not worried about when you came and when you're going to go. He's worried about what he's going to do with you right now. He's going to ask you, what is your state of mind right now? If you can, badal gayi mere dil ki dunya, aata ne wo martaba diya, karam ki aisi nigah dali, gada ko sulta bana diya. The teacher is worried, when the period is going to end. The sheikh is worried about what will be my murid's final end. Iman par marega ya nahi. That's what he's worried about. Teacher is worried about the student will fail my class or will he pass my class. The murshid is worried about will my murid fail in the dunya and in the akhirah, or will my murid pass in the dunya and the akhirah. And if he doesn't pass, I make sure I make him pass. Right? The teacher will finish his course and he finish teaching you after that day. But the murshid is the one who will teach you continuously throughout your life, because his teaching is about life. His teaching is about life and about dying. So his teaching will never come to an end. And you will end up maybe spending 5 years, 10 years, 15 years in a school, wallahi, and then you'll do your matriculation. But in a Pir Murshid Astana, sometimes one moment is enough. Some people would have been there for 20 years in a Pir Murshid Astana and didn't matriculate or didn't complete the course. And one person will walk in and the Murshid's one gaze at him will change his life for him. In a moment, things will change for him. The teacher will teach you by 101 examples. Sometimes the Murshid's one look is enough to teach you a lesson. He'll just look at you once and you'll get the lesson. Or sometimes the Murshid will tell you nothing, but his silence will speak volumes. His silence will speak volumes, right? You die for your sheikh out of love for him, but the Murshid lives for you. You die out of love for him, and the Murshid says, no, I live for you. I live for you. Wallah, I'm telling you, this is the nature. And really, I'm not becoming sentimental. And I'm not becoming, no, these are not just, lafazi. This is what it is. And this is has been the sunnah of the Holy Prophet Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All of those people who followed the path of the sunnah. And if you ask me about my mentors like Hazrat Shah Ghulam Muhyiddin Qazi's life, or anybody of those people that I have been mentored by, and every one of them, if you ask me, what was their way? I'll tell you sunnah. I'll tell you sunnah. Really, sunnah. That's what it was. I saw them following sunnah to the T. But not this zahiri sunnah, do this and do that. Sunnah in everything. I'll give you examples from his life to give you an indication. What did the Prophet of Allah say? Right? He said, أكمل المؤمنين إيمانا أحسنهم خلقا. He said the one who's most perfect in iman is the one with the best character. Right? And then the Prophet of Allah said, and from the best of the best in character, وَخِيَارُكُمْ خِيَارُكُمْ لِنِسَائِهِمْ. And the best from amongst the best of you in character is he who is best to his wife. I always tell many people, I said, you want to know how spiritual you are? Don't go and ask your Pir or Murshid. Go ask your wife next to you. She'll give you a more honest answer as to how spiritually ponchela you are than anybody else. No, really. وَخِيَارُكُمْ خِيَارُكُمْ لِنِسَائِهِمْ. And the best amongst the best of those are those who are best to their wives. And it's my case. No, not for you guys. You all are lost cases. With my grandfather, I saw a relationship between husband and wife that was modeled on sunnah. That was modeled on sunnah, because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Tadfur bidati din." He said to Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, don't look for nasab, don't look for lineage, don't look for wealth. Limaliha wa lihasabiha wa jamaliha. That's just byproducts. Tadfur bidati din. What you choose is deen. And if she has deen, then she's the wife of Muhyiddin, Ghulam Muhyiddin. Right? That is it. In every aspect, they lived the life according to sunnah. They lived it and they demonstrated it in terms of their interaction with murideen. The gentleness, the Holy Quran says, they're following the sunnah. Allah says about the Prophet of Allah, وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا. If you were rough, غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ, and hard-hearted, لَنْ فَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. People would disperse from you. The people wouldn't hang around you. People wouldn't mill around you. People wouldn't want to be around you. And then the Prophet of Allah said, and what did he say? Ya Rasulullah, you are like that because of the rahmah of Allah. And those who follow in the footsteps of the Prophet of Allah would be like that. They are not rough. They are refined. غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ. They are not hard-hearted. They are soft-hearted. لَنْ فَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. That's why people would just be attracted to them. Child would come, an adult would come, anybody would come. They would want to sit in his presence. They would come inside for 5 minutes, they'll end up spending 55 minutes. And after the 55 minutes, you don't want to leave him. You don't want to leave him. لَنْ فَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. And even if you are rough-hearted, and if you are hard-hearted, right? And if you, فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ. They would forgive you. They would overlook your shortcomings. It's okay. وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ. And as a murid, he knows all the things. Hazrat, I did this. Hazrat, I did this. I did that. He came for confession. فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ. Pardon them. وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ. In the early hours of the morning, सब उनके लिए बैठ के दुआ करेंगे. अल्लाह इसकी माफी फरमा. वस्तगफिर लहum. And they were humble enough. وشاورهم في الأمر. They would consult. They won't be shy to say, I don't know. What do you think about this? But how many times, as a child in front of him, as a grandchild, he would ask me, Beta, what do you think? Kya karna? What must I do? What should we do? You see this issue here. That didn't bring them down. That was the humility. وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. Right? That is what the Muhammadi Sunnah was all about. Right? You want to ask his karamats. People talk about karamats. People now make up karamats. Karamat for me was a man not missing his tahajjud under any circumstance. Qari Saad was telling me, and I've seen this myself. The man would go into sajda, following in the sunnah of the Prophet of Allah, weeping. Tawbah ya Allah. How many times I heard him saying, even in the dhikr, Tawbah ya Allah, Tawbah ya Allah, Tawbah ya Allah, seeking forgiveness from Allah in the early hours of the morning, when nobody is there to see, nobody is there to impress anymore. Nobody is there. It's just alone me with you and Allah. And at that time, the tears would just fall. The tears would fall. And Allah would say, this man is going to be under the shade of my arsh on the day of Qiyamah. فَفَاضَتْ عَيْنَا وَرَجُلٌ ذَكَرَهُ اللَّهُ خُيَلًا وَفَفَاضَتْ عَيْنَا. He remembers Allah when he's all alone and his eyes would fill up with tears. Right? And they would end up inside there with the type of ta'alluq. But you know what the best part was? The best part was the overwhelming love for Allah, Rasulullah, the Ahlul Bayt, and the beloved ones of Allah. They lived and died in that love. They lived and died in that love. That love is what gave sweetness to their iman. That love is what they lived for. Right? If you went into his, he would always say, "Jana tere milne ki tartib ye sochi hai, hum dil mein bana denge chota sa sanam khana." I remember when finally he bought the house next to the mazar. And when I came to see the house before they could, move in or whatever it is there, right? We stood by the window and he's telling me, see the best part of the house, right? And then he just, I'm a child with him, so he would be very jovial with me. He said, tere ghar ke samne, main apna ghar bana dunga. Or some line, from a filmy song, but tere ghar ke samne, main apna ghar bana dunga. Meaning in front of your house, I want to build my house. So when I open my window there, I'll see your house. Now, this is that ta'alluq. This is that muhabba, which you can't buy. When you open up pocket like this, dil ke aine mein hai tasveer hai yaar. Jab zara gardan jhukai, dekh li. Anytime you saw him, picture of the beloved, photo of the beloved, thinking of the beloved. Ya mere peer, ya mere peer, ya mere peer. Plaster the wall like a diwana. You know the story about the Majnun? I'll kiss the walls of the door of the house of Layla. I'll kiss the walls of the door of the house of Layla, because perhaps that she may have touched the door, and that door has that house and the walls of that house have the opportunity of housing Layla. It is this diwanagi ishq, badi cheez hai simab. Diwanagi ishq, badi cheez hai simab. Diwana bahut soch ke diwana bana hai. He said, man doesn't become completely in love like that there. It's a very big thing, this madness of love, this malady of love. And wallah, every sahabi had this madness of love. Every sahabi had this junoon. Really, I'm using the word not in a derogatory manner, right? But this diwanagi of muhabbat. It is what made them who they are. And their love came from, sar katate hai tere naam pe mardane, giving their lives on the battlefields, to just sitting there like diwanas and looking at the Prophet of Allah, not being able to take their eyes away from him. Wallah. And I saw 4 things in him, which every murid, this is his legacy, which is the legacy of the Prophet of Allah. And this is his legacy. There were 4 qualities which were the foundation of his being and his character. Number 1 was iman. Number 2 was muhabba. Number 3 was ittiba. And number 4 was ita'ah. And these are the foundational pillars upon which you establish your relationship with the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this was his legacy. He spent his life sweetening his iman. Not only having iman, but perfecting his iman in terms of his relationship with his family, with his children, with his elders, with his uncles, with his wife. Biggest critic. I haven't seen, Arabi used to say sometimes, say, oh, Leila Majnun. No, really, in terms of how they, right? No, I used to see that. And like even at that age, banter you would see. Very rare to see in so many in that age. Relying on somebody, being there with them, that's character for you. That is akhlaq. That's a kamal of iman. That's the kamal of iman. What sign of iman? Someone had to ask me, what is the sign of Shah Ghulam Muhyiddin's iman? Kamal iman. I said, no, this is, huh? What are you talking about? Not all his love. No. The Prophet of Allah said, there's proof. You're looking for everywhere. I'll show you proof right there. Muhabbat. Very few people, my sheikh, and who he's Shah Ghulam Muhyiddin Qazi Habib is also his Khalifa as well, and my father as well. When they went 1979, 75. Qadi Saad was also there, he was much younger. When in 75, when they received Khilafat, my father got into a tanga with my sheikh, Hajj Habib Ali Shah Sani, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi, and they were going to break some money, paise torwane ke liye. So as they were talking tasawwuf on the tanga and everything inside there, and then my father says that my sheikh, my Pir Murshid, held his hand, and he's talking now. He says, Rauf Saab, ये खाजी जो है ना, खाजी, they speak Hyderabadi लहजा, ये खाजी जो है ना, ये इश्क में काफिर है. खाजी जो है इश्क में काफिर है. My father said that time he was young, so he's thinking, why is Hajj Habib Sani saying, ये खाजी इश्क में काफिर है? Not understanding at that time. My father said, it didn't strike me at that time. He said he's reached the highest level of madness in love. He's reached the highest level of, right? Highest in tasawwuf, kufr is not to be taken in terms of, rejection. Kufr means absolute rejection of everybody but Allah. Ishq mein kafir. Ishq mein kafir. He said, Khazi jo na, ishq mein kafir hai. इश्क की काफिर अदाई, हुस्न की वारफ्तगी, देखना हो तो किसी से राबता पैदा करके देख. Hidden, you won't see it, but you know what, Darsina Nasiruddin, Juz Ishq Nami Ganjan. In the heart of Nasiruddin Shirah Dehlavi, there's nothing but ishq. Look at this riddle. Look at this, this unexplicable mystery. Darya, that an entire ocean is in a bubble. The heart is so small, but there's an ocean of love in it. And this is what he was. Diwanagi of the pir. Right? And then ittiba. Everything was following in the footsteps of the Buzurgan Din, Awliyaullah. Following in the footsteps of Mulai Kainat, Ahlul Bayt. How many times he insisted, observe Gyan. How many times Imam Hussein, I remember, that the 10 nights programs, and when he was well at the time, Mujhe ye kaisi bala ne ghera, Hussein meri madad ko pahuncho. How I remember that, how he read it himself. That's where you get it. That's the soul of your iman, man. That's the soul of your iman. And ita'ah. Buzurgan ne farmaya baat khatam. There was no argument in obedience. If this was to be read it, no questions asked. If this was to be done, do it, no questions asked. Live. I would sometimes delay him at night. He needs to sleep. Why? He needs to get up at 2:30 in the morning. I said, Baba, I got to go and sleep. I can't afford to miss that one recitation of mine. Because you know what? That maybe that 5 minutes that later, I may just finish up that one reading that I do, I may not be able to. No. Obedience. Har cheez mein. Spend a little bit of time. Oh, Allahu Akbar. What discipline, man. What discipline. Spend a little bit of time in the company of the Pir Murshid. And Hazrat Shah Sahib Rahmatullah Ta'ala went away. But the impact that it left on them, the impact, it changed. We hear it about him. Kalal badal gayi mere dil ki dunya den. We throw all the ata ne wo martaba diya. Karam ke aisi nigah dali gada ko suta. Bakwas. Asal jo hai na, these people's hearts were changed. These people's hearts were changed. They didn't spend 8 hours in Qawwali and not read Fajr Namaz. They would spend 8 hours in Ibadat and 8 minutes in Qawwali. That's the difference. They would spend 365 days worshipping Allah and 1 day celebrating Urus. And not spend 364 days of the year preparing for an Urus and making Ibadat for 1 day. They would not sit there and look at the whole dunya. They would prefer to close their eyes and look away from dunya. Really. They would prefer seclusion, right, than the company of people of dunya. Right? They would prefer you want to come see me? No problem. Come for the zikr program. Come for the Khatme Khajagan. Come for the Sunday program. You want my company? Come make zikr. Don't come and sit there, Hazrat, Ji, how are you? Alhamdulillah. Hazrat, how's this halat? Ji. आके जिक्र करो यार, आके जिक्र करो, आके फिक्र करो, खत्म खालियान पढ़ो, इबादत करो. And he was very pregnant. He would tell me, he said, ये क्या हो गया है लोगों को? He said, and he would be so insistent. He said, all this rusumat, all these rituals that people had engaged in, the ceremony was more important than actual thing. He said, आजकल कोई कुरान नहीं पढ़ता है. Nobody reads Quran. You go to Isa alayhi salam, Milad, he said, nobody reads Quran. He said, sit down, read Quran. Sit and read Quran. Sit and read Salawat. Read Durud. Ibadat karo, Baba. Ibadat karo. यहाँ बैठ के मेरे मुंह देखने से कुछ फायदा हासिल होने वाला नहीं है. Really, I heard this being said by him. जिक्र करो, फिक्र करो, कुरान उठाओ, तस्बीह रखो. You can't read Quran, no problem. एक तस्बीह. You can read Subhanallah ना, पढ़ो. कुछ तो करो, शरीयत पर अमल करो. So it's not about the romantic aspects of it. We don't romanticize spirituality. As much as we miss him and we love him and we benefited from him, but how many of us will continue his legacy? How many of us, after Allah took him away and granted him parda, would still continue in that tradition of waking up for tahajjud? How many? Without fail. Making zikr without fail. Making khatme ghaligan on Sundays without fail. You're doing Yarwi without fail. Observing all these important, milad and this without fail. With 5 times namaz, 5 times salah. How many of us? How many of us I know of that he would be, he'd be disappointed. He'd forgive them, but he'd be disappointed. He said, "Ja kam ho gaya, wo morning program ke liye chona gaye. Ana chhod diye. Zikr chhod diye. Kam ho gaya, problem resolved. Financial issues sorted out. Personal domestic issues sorted out. Now you don't need Allah, don't need Rasulullah, don't need zikr, don't need fikr." That's what we need to hold on to. If that legacy of your relationship is merely memories, then he's dead. He's dead to you. And he's dead for you. But if the legacy of his teachings are alive in you, he's living for you and living for you and living with you. Really. वो मैं दे दे जो पहले शिबली और मंसूर को दी थी. Give me that goblet that you gave to Shibli and Mansoor. तो बैदम भी निसारे मुर्शिदे में खाना हो जाए. You understand? Really, it's all about easy. I said, go and do it. He says, इश्क और दीदा और इश्क की उसको मेराज हो. I don't think that kalam, it's true. दीदा और इश्क की उसको मेराज हो. That person will receive highest level of spiritual ascent. Who? जिसने मशक़े तसव्वुर किया पीर का. You become preoccupied with everything. Become preoccupied with your beloved. And then see how your life changes. See how your life changes. Allah grant us to begin. I'm sorry, you can keep on talking, but this time doesn't allow to do that. But all I'm saying is, very few people have reached that level of dedication. I've seen many devoted murids, but I've seen very few dedicated and devoted murshids. Really, really. And that loss, nobody can quantify. That loss nobody can quantify. And at the same time, that gain, for those people who gained it, can never ever be quantified as well. So make shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that inshallah ta'ala we've had a temporary break in terms of transit. But very soon you'll be reunited with them. We'll be on the same flight. You'll be on the same flight. And the same flight takes us to one place, inshallah ta'ala. Jannatul Firdaus. Jannatul Firdaus. Anta al-mar'u ma'aman ahabba. You'll be with the one whom you love. And the chain and that silsila will continue, and you will be with whom? The Prophet of Allah. Nabiyyin, Siddiqeen, Shuhada, Salihin, Ahlul Bayt, Ridwanullahi alayhim, ajma'in. Jazakumullah khairan wa alaykum.
Jazakumullah. Beautifully encapsulated everything. Jazakumullah, Maulana Hafiz Fuzail, for that. Just once again, I thank one and all, and we do apologize that due to COVID, there's certain restrictions and we have to be wearing masks and social distancing, and some of the men had to move over into the other rooms. Some of you who are used to coming into this room could not come because the room is already filled. We do apologize for that, but we make dua to Allah Ta'ala that over the next few months, this bala and this pandemic leaves us. But do take care of yourselves, continue doing so, and help us to continue this work of our shuyukh in all the astanas of Hazrat Sufi Sahib, as well as in this khanqa, to keep Hazrat's legacy alive. Alhamdulillah, programs are continuing, and we ask you to make dua for our Sheikh, and Allah raise his maqam to the highest. And as I mentioned, we send the Saleh Sawab, dedicate this night to Sultan al-Hind Khaja Mu'inuddin Chishti, Hazrat Sufi Sahib Qibla Rahimullah, and the Murideens who have passed on. I mentioned the names earlier on. Allah Ta'ala raise their maqam for us. With these words, we stand up for Salatu Wassalam.
Allah walo ko chahne wale आजीज़ाना सलाम करते हैं अल्लाह वालों को चाहने वाले आजीज़ाना सलाम करते हैं इश्क वालों को मानने वाले आशिकाना सलाम जब से ज़ाहिर हुए हैं नूर खुदा नूरी मखलूक का ये विर्द रहा आज भी लाखों उनके रोज़े पर आज भी लाखों उनके रोज़े पर मुखलिसाना सलाम करते हैं अल्लाह वालों हने वाले आजीज़ाना सलाम पूछा शिबली से क्या किया तुमने कैसे आका को पा लिया तुमने बोले आका को अपने हम हर पल बोले आका को अपने हम हर पल والیہانہ سلام کرتے ہیں، اللہ والوں کو چاہنے والے عاجزانہ سلام۔ سب سے بدتر یہ امتی آقا، لاج رکھ لینا اس کی بہر خدا، پیر و مرشد پہ صدقے قاضی بھی، پیر و مرشد پہ صدقے قاضی بھی عارفانہ سلام کرتے ہیں، اللہ والوں کو چاہنے والے عاجزانہ سلام کرتے ہیں، عشق والوں کو مانے عاشقانہ سلام کرتے ہیں۔
رحم کر یار محمد مصطفیٰ کے واسطے، یا محمد لطف فرما او خدا کے واسطے، یا علی شیر خدا مشکل کشائی کیجئے، شاہ حسن بصری امام الاولیاء کے واسطے، واسطہ دیتا ہوں میں پنجتن پاک کا، بھیک دے مجھ کو شہید کربلا کے واسطے، غوث اعظم شاہ جیلا قطب دورہ المدد، ہو ذرا نظر کرم خواجہ پیا کے واسطے، ہو معین الدین آقا کی مدد اب دم بدم، خواجہ ماہر ولی پیشوا کے واسطے، عین قطب الدین فرید الدین نظام الدین ولی، عین صابر کلیری حق نما کے، شاہ سلیمان پیر حافظ شاہ حبیب باصفا، ہو ذرا لطف و کرم صوفی پیا کے واسطے، خواجگان چشت کے بندوں کو کچھ مل جائے بھیک، در پہ حاضر آپ کے ہیں التجا کے واسطے، ڈال دے میرے گناہوں پر غلی میں مغفرت، دل میرا خالص بنا صبر و رضا کے واسطے، دل کو میرے صاف کر پر نور کر ایمان سے، شافع روز جزا خیر الورا کے واسطے، صلاة و سلام علیک یا سیدی یا حبیبی یا رسول اللہ، وعلی آلک و صحبک یا رحمت للعالمین۔ الفاتحہ۔
Before we commence, I ask Hafizat to make the dua. Lots of people ask questions, and we had written a book a while back, and inshallah we'll give it out to whoever hasn't had it yet. It's a timeline on Hazrat's life, and people like to sort of compare their lives and say, okay, in the period of 40 to 50, what did Hazrat do? Or 30 to 40, what did he do? And when Hazrat was our Maulana Hafiz Fuzail's age, in his 40s, 45, 46, he's about 47, he started making murid at that age. And I'm so honored and privileged that tonight we have one of Hazrat's second oldest murid, who is now 72 years old. I would like to bring Razak Bhai close to me. This is our Razak Bhai. Remove your mask. Razak Bhai, I've got so fond memories of him in my teens, where I basically, Hazrat was very, very close to him and his brothers, and the sort of the first khatams and the first zikrs that they used to attend in Lokat building, and then we used to go to his brother's house before Hazrat sort of moved on to Khanqa, and this it used to be done at their house. In the lounge, that's right. We used to read the Khatmi Haligan in the lounge. Jazakumullah so much for coming. Please make dua for us. He made Hajj with Hazrat as well. He was with Hazrat in Arafah, and he made his khidmat in all over Medina Munawwara, and he will also narrate to you the experience that they had when they could not get a flight out, that where they saw Hazrat Sufi Sahab. You know, am I right? You know, so they had this lots of opportunities. If you do get the opportunity, meet him. Like I said, when a murid, Hafiz can confirm this, when a murid meets a fellow Pir Bhai, it's as though he's meeting his sheikh. So when you see him, take maximum benefit, try and get whatever information you can about his time, because he saw Hazrat in that age. In this age, what Hafiz is now is what Hazrat was at the age when they were with him. Jazakumullah khair.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله رب العالمين العاقبة للمتقين والجنة للموحدين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسوله أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. يا رسول الله انظر حالنا، يا حبيب الله اسمع قالنا، إننا في بحر هم مغرق خذ يدي سهل لنا أشكالنا. اللهم أحينا في محبة الشيخ وأمتنا في محبة الشيخ واحشرنا يوم القيامة تحت تراب أقدامك يا أحباء الشيخ. اللهم إنا نعوذ بوصلك من سدك وبقربك من تردك وبقبولك من ردك، واجعلنا من أهل طاعتك وودك، وأهل لنا لشكرك وحمدك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
We do apologize for going over time, but like I said,